you feeling stuck in a toxic job, in a country you want to live, in a relationship that's going nowhere? I definitely have been there many times. And looking back, all big decisions that got me out of those challenging situations started with the same method. These questions helped me move to Spain on my own, pivot into product management, and build a life that feels much more aligned with who I am. In this video, I want to share 6 journaling prompts that I come back to every time when I'm facing a big decision. They don't tell you what to do, but you'll get all the answers about yourselves that you need to take the next step towards a better, more intentional life. Whenever I'm making a big decision, and I have made many, I don't start with pros and cons. I start with understanding myself and my actual motivation to change a certain aspect of my life. Then I look at the risks, the potential outcomes, the possible regrets, and finally turn all of that into an action plan. That's why these prompts go in a very specific order. Before we start, choose one decision that you are currently facing. Maybe it's changing jobs, moving abroad, leaving a relationship, or starting something that you've been putting off. Throughout the video, use this one decision to answer every prompt. That way, by the end of this video, you'll have your own roadmap instead of just listening to mine. My first prompt is always about alignment. Why do I want to change my life? How important is it to me? How aligned does it feel to my identity? You need to make sure that your reason is really coming from the inside. There will always be a lot of pressure from society, expectations from parents, friends, partners. You'll always feel like you have to be a certain way. You have to get married, you have to get a respectable job, you have to be nice to people you don't like. But really the only change that is worth the effort is the change that's coming from your identity. It's when you as a person love being creative and you're not interested in a finance job. It's when you love meeting new open-minded people and you couldn't be less interested in staying in your hometown. Both of these are from my experience. I know that I'm someone who appreciates freedom above all, wants to be financially free thanks to how smart and creative I am, and I'm ready to work for it even if it's not a standard path. And someone who stands for my values in any new environment. So when I was in a professional environment, when I was not given the opportunity to use my professional skills, I had to make a decision whether it's even worth staying. It was a really challenging situation, and it was probably the first one where I have used this framework. At the time, I have quit a job in a good company in order to work with a middle-sized startup who had a very interesting product, and they have hired me to be a product manager. But when I came to the company, it turned out that they do not actually have this product, they're not planning to develop it anytime soon, and they're just scamming their clients. I was really not in a position to change jobs because I was graduating uni and I had to spend more time focusing on my studies. So staying to work in this company while also studying and while also looking for a new job on the side was pretty much impossible. So my only two options were either to stay and work with what I have and just have a job to pay my bills, or to quit into nowhere and start looking for a job, because looking for a job is a full-time job as well. Even then, I already felt so aligned with my identity that staying in an environment where my professional opinions did not matter felt really wrong to me. So even though I was not planning to quit anytime soon for a couple months or at least a few weeks until I find a new opportunity, one day I just had a conversation with my manager and I quit with no notice. So when making a decision that might cause you to risk a lot, it needs to be really important for you. You need to be really excited to make a change. You need to feel like something's going wrong with your life and it's solely your opinion. It's when your life looks good to someone like your parents, your friends. They don't understand why you want to change anything, but deep down you know that it's not your life. Maybe you hate living in a big city amongst skyscrapers and you want to go live by the sea. Maybe you're doing a finance job that you hate every day more and you just want to quit and do creative stuff. When you have a desire to change your life coming from the inside, it's always worth paying very close attention to. So before you think about money, timing, or what everyone else expects of you, write down every reason you want this change. Get it out of your head and onto paper. If your motivation comes from your own values and identity, you'll have something much stronger to lean on once things inevitably become difficult. The second prompt is about the stakes. You need to answer yourself, what am I risking? Sometimes the change costs us a lot and we need to be open about it. It can cost stability, like it cost me in my first example. It can cost all your savings sometimes. It can cost you connections. It can cost opportunities that look good on paper. And it can cause you to walk into complete uncertainty because changing your life is difficult and you have never been on this path before. You need to be prepared that a lot is at stake when you're changing your life. Almost 2 years ago, I have moved to Spain knowing that I have already tried moving abroad. It did not work. It ended up being a very traumatizing experience for me. I was moving knowing that I have a good life at home, a life that I actually love. I had amazing friends, I had social life, I had a lot of opportunities that I wanted to take, but at the same time, it was not at all safe because there's war in Ukraine. So even though I knew I love my life a lot, I cannot be fully happy until I feel safe, which is unfortunately not possible in Ukraine right now. Before taking a decision to move, I did the math and I realized that I'm walking into full uncertainty. I'm moving to a country where I don't know anyone, I don't speak local language, I have no idea about the culture, I have never even visited before. I was also at the time working with a startup that entered a very challenging stage, and I knew this cooperation can go wrong very suddenly. I was asking my employers about it, and they assured me that everything's fine, they're really happy with the performance of the team, but yet I could see it was unstable, and I was right about it because 1 week after moving to Spain, I lost my job. So, whatever decision you are considering, you need to be honest with yourself and realistically look at what you might be risking if you take the opportunity. When you're already aware of the risks, you can move on to the third prompt and start thinking about the consequences. You need to ask yourself, what am I gaining if it works out? Obviously, we all hope for better outcomes, but we are also very often anxious about what happens if stuff doesn't work out. So to get yourself ready for any outcome, you need to write down how your life is going to change after you take the big decision. If you are, let's say, moving to a new country, you expect to have better life quality, more career opportunities, a better social circle. Every aspect from your life you expect to be upgraded from the move. If you want to leave a toxic relationship, you expect to spend some good time with yourself or to maybe find a better partner, to have a healthier, more fulfilling relationship with someone new or with yourself. Under this question, you need to get down on paper the best imaginable scenario. If all your dreams came true and this next change became the best decision of your life. Treat this as a written vision board of your future. If everything goes right, what does your life actually look like? Be as specific as possible because this is what you're deciding if it's worth fighting for. But realistically, not every big decision pays off. The country you chose to move to might not end up being your home. Your next partner might turn out to be just as bad as the previous one. You might need much more time to learn how to live with yourself again. So you need to be honest with yourself about what am I losing if it does not work out. This is not a pleasant exercise to do, but it is what gives you the confidence to take a risk. When you're only overthinking and the bad outcomes live just in your head, they always seem bigger than they actually are. You're not shaping them into actual words and you are fighting the enemies that you do not even know. But once you write it down, it stops being a vague fear in your head. It becomes a real scenario that you can actually be prepared for. And surprisingly often you realize that it's much less terrifying than your imagination made it up to be. After you have both best and worst case scenarios, you need to compare them and see if the best case scenario is worth it for you. You need to understand if you're okay with the outcome either way. Normally, if it doesn't work out, you at least get the experience. You have tried, you have failed, you have more knowledge and experience to try it again and to do it better next time. With the relationship example, it's not very common when people find their life partners from the first try. But in order to know how to build a good, healthy relationship, they normally need to try and fail a certain amount of times. They need to try being with different partners and see why it does not work out. With the moving example, it is not very common when someone moves to a new country and it ends up being the perfect decision for them. Even in my life, Spain is not my first move. I have tried living in the UK before. It did not work out, but thanks to this experience, moving to Spain was not as mentally challenging for me. I knew what being in a full uncertainty looks like and I was prepared for it. Even though I knew how much I was risking when I was moving to Spain, because I know that my level of preparation sounds horrible to people who are used to stability, I knew that trying to build a life in a good, safe country is worth the risk for me. I knew my job was falling apart, but I still believe that it's the right moment for me to go and try living in a new country. I have just graduated uni, I did not have an office job locally, meaning I was not connected to any location, and I knew it's a good time slot for me to start a new chapter. I also knew that no matter how it goes, I would get valuable experience and I would spend at least some time in safety, which for me as for Ukrainian matters a lot and is one of my biggest values. At this point, you should be already pretty close to making a decision, but if you're not convinced enough, the fifth prompt is how much will I regret it if I don't even try. We're always afraid of taking a big, important decision because it always comes with a lot of uncertainty. Changing anything always comes with a lot more effort than just staying in one same place. But what we should actually be afraid of is never giving it a try. Because then sometime after staying in one place, if you really hate it, you will come to resent your life, to resent yourself for never being brave enough, and you will be going deeper into a very negative, hateful state every day. If you already love your life and the big decision might cause you more effort than it will bring fulfillment in the end, it is true that it might not be actually worth it. Try rating it from 1 to 10. How much would you regret if you don't change anything? Never moving abroad, never changing careers, never leaving a relationship, never starting a relationship, never starting a business. If your answer is a 2, maybe it's simply not as important. But if it's a 9 or a 10, you are not stuck, you're just scared. And the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to take the first step. After writing down all these answers, you already know what you should or should not do. The sixth prompt is as important, if not the most important, because now you need to have an action plan. The final question of this framework is, what is my next step towards the life that I want? If you to this moment believe that you don't know how to make the change, it's not true. You can start by at least doing the research. You can talk to the person who has already been through this process and can share the experience with you. You can do the research about the country you want to move to, the job you want to land, the business you want to start, the sport you want to be doing. If you can come up with even more actionable first points, that's great. You can even write down the whole action plan, which is what I did when I was moving to Spain. I knew that I needed an international job, to choose a city, to have a certain amount of money saved, to book the flight, to book accommodation for the first stage. I had a pretty detailed plan up to the moment before moving. As soon as I landed in Spain, I had no idea what I'm doing, but at least I already got to this point and I was forced to make it work here. If after writing down all the answers you realize that you do not actually want to make the change, that's also perfectly fine. Now you have the proof and evidence-based understanding of why you actually do not need it. I've come back to this framework every time I was making life-changing decisions, not because it guarantees the right answer, but because it helps me understand myself well enough to know that I'm making a decision I won't regret. And that's all we can really ask for. If you have worked through this prompt with me, which I'm hoping for, I genuinely want to know which decision you are thinking about, so let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy honest conversations about building a life abroad, growing a career in tech, and making intentional life decisions, subscribe not to miss my new videos, and see you in the next one.